on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:36 on this Thursday morning in your nation's capital. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company. It's Larry and Julie getting you through the day, and we've been spending a lot of time talking about that amazing vote last night. Not into the wee hours, but it was late-ish, 9-ish, 10-ish, where the Senate, on a vote of 51 to 49, accepted the White House's rescission package as delivered by the director of OMB, Russ Vought. And, of course, the crown jewel of that rescission package is the defunding of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. That means your tax dollars will no longer go to fund NPR and ideas and opinions and political advocacy that you don't agree with, which I think is kind of a fundamental constitutional proposal. Joining us right now is Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas, who has been the tip of the spear on a lot of the discussions here with regard to the PBS, NPR stuff, but also some of the funding that USAID was involved with, and that's also part of this rescission package. Okay, Congressman Gill, you know what the first question is. Are you guys going to pass this? Because, of course, the Senate, they can't do anything easy. They had to throw an amendment in there. So now it's up to your colleagues to rally again and vote on it. What's the vote going to look like?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on. Yep, we did it once. We're going to do it again. This is not only a priority for the president, but it should be a priority for every single Republican who's in office right now. And whenever you think about something like NPR and PBS, and we talk a lot about how it's state-sponsored media and it's far-left propaganda outlets, and that's true. But, whenever you're a Republican representative in the House, you hear a lot of talk about being a team player and the importance of keeping the majority. And it is important. That is one of the most important things we can do is keep our House majority. Why in the world would we use the power that voters give us, the majority in the House and a majority in the Senate, to deliberately fund left-wing media that is then attacking our frontline members and our members across the country to the detriment of our efforts to keep the majority? Why would we do that? In other words, why would we use the power voters give us to fund our enemies on the other side of the aisle? That's crazy. So we're finally going to defund them.
Let me. People will say that this is a First Amendment rights issue, that you are silencing them and then censoring them because of their political positions and because of their opinions. Is that what's at play here? I mean, if NPR really was fair and balanced, would you still be on board with defunding them with tax dollars?
No, I wouldn't. It's just simply that this is not an appropriate, and I'm not even sure it's a constitutional use of our tax dollars, and it's certainly not needed. We're $37 trillion in debt. We don't have money to just throw around at pet projects because we feel like it or because they sound fun. We've got to actually be rational with our tax dollars. But, if any other news outlet came to me, regardless of their ideology, if you guys came to me and asked for tax dollars, I would say no. If Fox News came to me and asked me for tax dollars, I would tell them no. I'm certainly going to say no to left-wing propaganda outlets. But to begin with, we don't need any form of state-sponsored media in the United States of any ideology. We have a vibrant media sector in the United States. Everybody's starting a podcast now. You can get the news on the internet. You can get the news through other means. We just don't need this.
Well, it is just their tactic now is to scare the American public, and it's what's really, frankly, grotesque is using the disaster in Texas to paint this picture for Americans that will happen to you. That if this warning doesn't exist, this is the only way people are warned about such things. Where Media Research Center was able to show that that the local public radio station down in the Texas area was playing a national show. They didn't even break in to talk about the flooding. But this is the tactics of the left, and it's certainly the tactics that have been adopted by the Democrat Party is fear. How do you overcome that? How do you talk to your constituents and say, this simply isn't true?
Yeah, that's one of the things they bring up. What you'll also hear occasionally is they'll say, well, We have farmers in rural parts of the country, and they need to know what the weather's going to be. And the only way that they know is that they have these rural broadcast stations who are telling them, I guess, as if they don't have the internet there, which is such a crazy thing to say.
And insulting.
And deeply insulting.
Yeah.
But, I think that the American people can see through that. I mean, the American people are not stupid.
Right.
They can see that these are institutions that, NPR, for instance, very famously during the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, said that they were deliberately not going to cover it because, in their own words, it was nothing but a distraction. Yes. PBS is running cartoons with transgender characters, geared towards 3-year-olds. I mean, this stuff is so far beyond the pale that I think most Americans can see through it and realize this is not unbiased news. These are not, core pillars of our community that the left is trying to portray them as. These are just left-wing propaganda outlets.
And it's funny, Congressman Gill, as I saw these very wealthy, very well-educated white liberals in Washington, D.C. sit at your committee hearings and testify that rural Americans rely on NPR for their crop reports and their emergency broadcasts. It was shocking to me that the Democrats didn't bring one witness that fit that description. You would think they could find one person in a rural area who could testify under oath and say, yep, I rely on NPR. Is that because you Republicans refuse to allow that person to testify?
Well, let me tell you that I grew up on a cattle ranch in West Texas. I grew up since I was very little driving tractors and backhoes on the ranch. And it's a 1,000-acre ranch out there, which is big, but it's not a mega ranch by any means. And we have satellites in our tractors now. I mean, the idea that farmers are relying on public radio whenever you have precision farming, even on relatively small ranches, is so ludicrous.
Yeah,
but no, we would be happy to have. We'd be happy to have them. If they can find somebody who wants to make that case come before the committee, I'd love to question them.
Yeah, that person exists right next to the other individual who can't get a photo ID in this country. They don't exist. Congressman Gill, one other question on this. So you've already sort of delivered on the rescissions package. We got your confidence that you're going to pass this. Recently, this week actually, you were engaged in an interview where you described D.C. as a third world hellhole. This is our town, damn it. We're the local morning show here in D.C., but you're right. It is actually in many neighborhoods. But this comes in the wake of violent attacks against congressional staffers, tourists who are coming to this city, everyday Americans who want to come to their nation's capital and petition people like you, their representatives. That's their constitutional right. That's why D.C. is different than any other Democrat-run third world hellhole. The American people have a vested stake in this town. You have said that Congress needs to exercise better constitutional control over the management of this city. What's that going to look like? What do you have in mind exactly?
Yeah, and I guess I would frame this is, remember, the United States is the most powerful and wealthy country that has ever existed ever in all of history. And yet you come to our capital city, Washington, D.C., and whenever I'm here, I tend to stay pretty close to the Capitol. I don't venture very far out. And part of that is because it isn't safe in many areas of this city. It's extraordinarily high crime rates. To your point, we have staffers, we've had members of Congress be assaulted. And you're telling me this is in the capital city of the most powerful country that's ever existed, and we can't even control local crime. I mean, that is disgraceful. This is a city that not only do Americans from all over the country come to meet their representatives and to petition the government, but this is what foreign dignitaries also see oftentimes whenever they're coming to visit.
We agree, and we make this case often, Congressman Gill. I guess the question is, will the House start re-exercising their control over the management of this city, and do you see potentially rescinding the home rule provisions?
The short answer is I would love to see that. I would love to see Congress exercise more control over this city. I think that there are some different budgetary provisions that we can work with in the meantime before if we were able to get a home rule bill on the floor that we can play with that I think could put put some pressure on the city to clean itself up. But I would be entirely in favor of rescinding home rule.
Excellent. Congressman Brandon Gill, you gave us the soundbite we wanted. Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. And we appreciate you coming on the program. You're one of our favorites in this brand new class. Thanks for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
8:46.